have you with us. Tonight's top story. Exactly 52 years after Supreme Court's landmark decision in New York Times Co. v. U.S., we'll be airing new, semi-legally obtained footage of the key events leading up to the case. The problem began in 1967, when Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara commissioned a classified report on the U.S. activity in the Vietnam War. The result came to be known as the Pentagon Papers, and what it said was, frankly, distressing. Geneva Accords violations, expansion of the war by bombing Cambodia and Laos, a facade of lies over the course of 3 presidencies as to how involved America really was. Every government oopsie in Vietnam was in that file. No wonder it was 7,000 pages long. It was this force of paper that Daniel Ellsberg faced the daunting task of leaking to reporters 4 years later, in 1971. Ellsberg, a former analyst at RAND, the think tank commissioned to write the papers, had first attempted to notify senators of the document's contents. When that failed, he turned to the media, specifically Neil Sheehan, a journalist for the New York Times and later Washington Post reporters as well. Now, after the Times had published 3 installments of the papers, the Nixon administration began to panic just a little bit. It petitioned a district court for a restraining order against the Times, citing the Espionage Act of 1917, which imposes penalties on interference with military operations. Its request was granted, so the Times sued, appealing the decision all the way to the Supreme Court. 4 days after hearing the case, the justices delivered their verdict. They were not impressed with the federal government. They invalidated the restraining order in a per curiam opinion just 3 paragraphs long. The 3 justices who dissented did so because they felt that deliberation had been too rushed, not because they decisively supported the government's actions. The landmark majority decision established a heavy presumption against the constitutionality of using prior restraint and placed the burden of proof on the government. Recognizing the significance of the case, each of the 9 justices filed an individual opinion. Concurrences ranged from arguments that prior restraint by the executive should be approved by Congress to arguments that complete elimination of prior restraint was the only way for the press to function as a watchdog. Other justices reasoned that, unlike Schenk's actions in Schenck v. U.S., where the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the government, the New York Times actions did not pose a clear and present danger to national security, leading to a decision in favor of First Amendment rights, specifically freedom of the press. This aligns well with the expansion of civil liberties and rights that characterized the back half of the 20th century, with other cases such as Engel v. Vitale and Wisconsin v. Yoder also defending First Amendment rights. It'll be interesting to see whether the courts will continue down this path over the next 52 years. And that's all we've got for today's feature report. Thanks for listening, and stick around to see our next story about how a local cat is hitting the pool for some exercise, as well as this Saturday's lottery drawing.